Obviously, the big news of the day, G, was what was announced yesterday that Deshaun Watson suspension will be appealed. We all thought it wouldn't happen. I can't remember if you didn't think it would happen, Mike.
No, I thought it would happen.
You thought it would happen. So Mike was the only one.
Yeah.
The rest of us, I think, maybe conned ourselves into believing it wasn't going to happen. G, I know you have some first thoughts on this.
Well, I will say this. It's not so much about the extra suspension. That's part of the process, and we'll see what the NFL Players Association will do to combat that. We'll talk about it a little bit today. But what I want to get to is the attitude around some of the things that we consistently see. When I was on the way home, I happened to be listening to the radio. And on the radio, an individual, young person, or I don't even think he's that young, but an individual basically said something to the effect of, they were talking about how the system seems to be different for different people, right? And somehow he came up with the words and ideas to say, well, a little along the line of, just don't get in trouble. All you got to do is don't get in trouble. And for me, as an African-American male, those type of comments rub me the wrong way. They rub me smooth wrong way. Now, I want to give a couple statistics here, and I want to keep going, and I want to prove a point before we get to the rest of our stuff. And I just want to show people a little something. Black Americans are incarcerated in state prisons across the country at nearly 5 times the rate as whites. In 2019, the median white household income was $188,000, which is 7.8 times of the typical black household. Median black male worker earns 74% as much as the median white worker. In 2016, over 70% of Asian and black workers in Great Britain and the United States said they had experienced racial harassment at work in the previous 5 years. On average, black, American, and Hispanic workers with the same education level and the same degrees earn only 80% of those of whites. 42% of employees in the U.S. have experienced or witnessed racism in the workplace, and for Glassdoor's 2019 Diversity and Inclusion Study. The issue that you get down to here is this is the most powerful point. 93% of white workers do not believe racism or ethnic discrimination exists in their workplace or in their country. That's a wide divide and a wide gap. When you hear people say, just don't get into trouble, we hear that a lot. When I get pulled over and African Americans get pulled over, they just say, just comply. Do what they tell you to do. Just do. There has been a situation in our country where African Americans live on 2 different playing fields, 2 different systems. It is very evident that happens a lot of different places. My point is, as individuals, we have to be more sensitive and understanding of what the plight is. In the case of Deshaun Watson, yes, he did something incorrect, and we all agree with that. But we almost have to come to the conclusion that just because Deshaun Watson did something and he needs to be punished for it, the system has to be fair and equitable, and they have to take care of the same things that happen with other people under that same policy. I'll end with this. I don't sleep very much. And the reason I don't sleep very much is because of those statistics. When I got into this game, I came from nowhere. I've been here 12 years. I have 2 degrees from Ohio University, marketing communication. I graduated with honors from Ohio Center for Broadcasting. I had a 1.5-year internship. I played football. I'm a national championship in high school. I'm in my high school Hall of Fame. I'm a 4-year letterman from Ohio University. I've worked in corporate America for 8 to 10 years in middle management. On credentials alone and work ethic alone, I will be honored to say that no one is working harder than me, and I'll stake my claim to it. And the reason I work that hard is because I have to be the representation of people that kids can make it, that look like me, that come from where I'm at. There's 3 African Americans that do radio. There's 3 African Americans that are prominent in the media. That is a powerful statement. 70% of the people in football, in sports, are African American. For you to be able to articulate what African Americans go through, you first need to have people that are able to represent that and give that point of view. Lastly, I call myself the people's champion because I am a representation of the people. And if I'm a person with all of those credentials, a mother and a father who have college education, and I can't make it, and I can't be where I'm supposed to be, and I can't exceed and reach the stars, then what hope does somebody who doesn't have those things come from a country and come from parents who don't have that background? That's the burden you carry as being the only one. That's the burden you carry when you watch stories, and every single time you turn on the TV, it's somebody like you doing that, getting that light, being shed that way, and you just have to deal with it, get over it. Well, I'll tell you this. As part of my responsibility is, much is given as much is required, I'm never going to sit back and let people tear down people unnecessarily. If you do something wrong, hey, we all for it. But at the end of the day, my job is checks and balances. If we're going to talk that way for this person, we got to talk that way for that person. And that's what my mantra is. That's what I stand on. And that's why that championship belt means more than what people think. It's deeper than sports. It's life. And so that's what I want to say as we keep it moving. We'll talk about Deshaun Watson and a lot of other things, but we have to watch and we have to understand the context in which we talk about certain items and when it comes to people of color and the way we perceive them in the media.
Wow, powerful stuff. Well said. I have, nothing for us to say about that.
No?
I don't know. G made his point. I don't know. We need to. But I do have one thing. Do you want to call out the person who said that?
He works at ESPN Cleveland. I'm gonna keep it classy. Gonna keep it classy.
By the way, the one stat you gave, all of that, none of those stats were surprising, except for the last one, that you said 92% of white Americans don't think there's discrimination in the workplace. I find that one impossible to believe because most of the white people I know, like Mike and myself and others, but if that's the bubble I'm in with that type of people.
We're also in Cleveland,
we
in
all
Ohio.
Understand that these things happen. So 92% seems impossible.
That's why it's so important that I talk about diversity. It's just no reason that I should be the representation of an entire culture because there's more people out there qualified to do what we do. And it's just not right.
Yeah.
Those are horrifying statistics.
Yeah.
I will say this, in fairness, if I ever hear of Baker Mayfield accused by 25 different women of sexual inappropriateness, I'm going to go after him. I'm going to be mad at him, and I'll understand if they throw the book at him. I hope they do. So I can't speak from your perspective, obviously, and I don't pretend like I'm able to or anything like that, but I do know that you're very emotionally wrapped up in this, and I do know that comes from a history that I haven't had and can't experience. But I do wonder how much of how much of this has a racial component to it and how much of it doesn't. I would like to. There's no way of doing a direct comparison. That's the ultimate problem with this whole process, is that there is no other comparison to this that we can look back in the league that's like an apples to apples or even apples to any other kind of fruit situation because it is so unprecedented. But so these questions are always going to be there because we don't have a direct comparison that we can make. So it's always going to be, how much of this is influencing that? What is the racial aspect of this?
Right.
And we just don't have anything that we can point to say, well, here's an example where that wasn't the exact same thing, because we're trying to compare it to Tom Brady deflating footballs. These are slightly different crimes.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the Ben Roethlisberger situation, even that's not the same. Actually, what Roethlisberger was accused of is far more serious than what Deshaun Watson's accused of. However, you talk about different amount of numbers. I don't know if that matters because ultimately the league, in this case, what the judge was looking at was only 4 cases. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think Roethlisberger would be the closest thing.
Yeah.
From my perspective, where I'm coming from, just to be clear, it's not just the isolated incident with Deshaun Watson.
But you understand that's what we're thinking of and talking about right now.
Right.
So it's natural to make that conclusion.
Yeah, so let me clarify. So when you talk about the racial component of what we're talking about with Deshaun Watson, you have to also take into context and look at other parts. So not only is it Deshaun Watson with some of the statistics, let's talk about the statistics of African-American coaches, right? You have a coach that has a lawsuit that says he was told to lose games. And he was fired after having 2 winning seasons. Then, during the process, we put the Rooney rule in place to adjust and to pivot to some of these things to try to adjust them. Well, that's turned out to be a sham as well. You know, you have coaches and owners going to other players saying, hey, you already got the job before you even interview a black candidate.
Yeah.
You talk about the limited positions in college football as well as the NFL. Less than 10% in all college coaching jobs are black African Americans. Now, ask this question. How can you have 70% of your base football players,
Your workforce.
your workforce,
essentially.
70% is black?
Yeah.
And yet and still on the reverse side, when it comes to leading, organizing, being in leadership, it's less than 10%. How is that possible? Are you telling me that every 70% of black people don't want to coach? They don't have the experience level? They don't have the know-without? Why are the numbers skewed to the point where you have to have a policy in place that says you at least have to even interview them?
Yeah, and the policy's not working, right? And I don't know that issue, and obviously we weren't planning on talking about that, but you brought it up, so I do want to talk about it before we get back to the Watson appeal. But it's such a complicated issue, how to solve this problem of lack of black coach representation in the NFL.
It's undeniable. It's huge.
And obviously there's racism there. That doesn't mean all the owners are racist. Obviously all the owners are not racist. But what I said yesterday is if you're a 70-year-old white guy and your circle of people is a bunch of old white guys, then even if you consciously have no racism, like you're not a racist, right? You don't think any bad things about black people or whatever. Even subconsciously, you're like, well, when I interview a guy, I might just feel more comfortable with this guy. You might not even realize
talks like
it.
I talk.
Right,
This
but
guy,
you're just used to being around this guy.
Yeah. I know him from the yacht
guy.
club.
Exactly, and so you may not be overtly racist at all. You may not be racist at all, and yet it's still an inherent advantage for the white coach. And I don't know how to solve that problem.
Jason, solve all these problems. Jason Lloyd, solve all these problems.
Well, there is a way that goes a long way in solving it, and that's to get black representation and ownership. And that's really where the change is going to come in. When you get more black representation at the highest level, it'll trickle down from there. I've thought that for a long time. It's cracking that nut. And really not even at the ownership level, but we saw it with Derek Jeter. Look what Derek did when he went to the Marlins at a really high level, at the presidential level, and bringing in the first woman in a front office position, and the way that he diversified the Marlins. That's how you have to go, as far as I'm concerned. And I give Jimmy Haslam credit. I've been hard on Jimmy for a lot of things, but when you look at the black coaches that he's brought in, the black GMs that he's brought in, you can bang on the Haslams for a lot, but they have given a lot of opportunities to African American head coaches and GMs.
That's true.
And I'll just say this really quickly, because I don't want to go down a whole rabbit hole with the whole thing, because we want to stay on topic here. But I look at a couple things. When you talk about racism, it doesn't have to be isolated to penalties and policy. It doesn't have to be automated to hiring. The most egregious thing that the NFL has done, and they've admitted to it, they've said basically in the CTE concussion settlement, they have a settlement of funds and pools and different things that you give out to players who have CTE, dementia, things like that. The league has started with racial norming. And racial norming, I'm going to give you an example. They start with the premise that African Americans are at a lower cognitive level than white people. That's the premise. They use that to then say, well, since you can't show cognitive loss because we already thought you were dumber than a white person.
Who is this starting at this starting point?
This is in the CTE concussions.
In the CTE, so these are doctors making this claim?
Yes, doctors.
Okay. I just didn't know who we were talking about.
Yeah, doctors. And the league has come out and said to themselves, yeah, we probably shouldn't be using racial norming. However, we don't have anything better to use in order to give out the settlements. So what you have is a disproportionate effect as black Americans go and try to get aid, try to get CTE money. And they're saying, well, we can't give you any 50,000 claims denied because they're saying, well, you can't show cognitive loss because we already thought you were dumb anyway.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that.
Now, how is that in your policies. And yet I can sit here and look at the rest of this stuff and say, oh, everything's above board. You've admitted to it. And it's there. So my thing is this. It's just not the Deshaun Watson thing. Sometimes we have to look past at it and actually say to ourselves, could there be something here? It's not saying it's guaranteed, but could there be a lens in which this has skewed the way we look at the NFL in our systems?
Well said. Jason, let's jump in with you on Deshaun Watson here. Why do you think the NFL decided to appeal ultimately? Like, whoever's ultimate decision what this was, Roger Goodell, a consortium of owners, why do you think they ultimately decided to do it? Because if they don't appeal, even though there's some verbal and written backlash, the story essentially goes away if they don't appeal. Right? I mean, we're no longer waiting for anything at this point. And instead, the story's going to now continue endlessly. So why do you think they did it?
It's pretty clear they weren't happy with 6 games. They wanted more than 6 games. And I didn't think they would appeal. I wrote that while I was on vacation, that I thought that they would let it lie because this is the system that Roger wanted. Roger wanted the heat off of him, and he didn't want to be responsible for this. There's so much complicated factors around the Roethlisberger case, the Ezekiel Elliott case, Tom Brady and Deflategate. He caught so much heat for that he really wanted off of that, and so that's why they came up with the system that they have. And I saw right before we went on, Mike Florio with report from his source that Roger will appoint someone outside of the league office to hear the appeal. I'm really happy that that's the case because I was sitting here all morning going, it's a rigged system. It's a completely rigged system. If Roger's going to hear the appeal on this or anyone else from the league office, then this whole system is a sham. And if I'm Sue Robinson, I go to him and say, you know what, I'm out. Because if this is the way it's going to be, you're not going to sully my name like this. You're not going to use me in a manner like this. So I'll be curious to see who they appoint to hear the appeal. And the NFL is within their right to appeal. They are, just like, Deshaun could have appealed if he wanted to. But I'm curious to see who's going to hear it. And I'm really glad that it's not going to be anybody from the league office because Jason, it just felt like this was a rigged system.
That brings up a good point. With Sue Robinson, both the NFL and the NFLPA got to decide and agree upon her. In this case, it's exclusively the NFL who gets to pick this arbiter, right?
I believe so,
yes.
Yeah. Which is interesting because if Deshaun had appealed, he would have appealed to who? Roger.
So it would make sense.
So it is still
they're probably going to pick somebody who would, at least consider them
be on their side.
So let me ask you guys this. You said, Jason, you're happy that the report from Florio is that it'll be somebody outside of the league. I think we're all happy to hear that. However, do we have faith that this person, whoever it may be, is going to be as impartial as Judge Robinson? Because I'm skeptical. Mike?
Skeptical is kind.
The reason that I have a little bit of faith in it more isn't because I think the NFL is going to not be cynical about it and do the right thing. I think it's because they know. I think it's for the same reason that I felt like they were going to appeal. It's not because they want to do the right thing. It's because they're reading the temperature of the room and they're reacting accordingly. And they know that we're watching every move. I think that they would, if they had their druthers, they wouldn't have appealed. But they saw the pushback from this nationally. Yeah. They heard. They're following. They're on Twitter. They're seeing what's going on. They read the temperature and they said, "We have to appeal. This is for the reputation of the league. This is a moment that we have to meet by doing this, whether we want to or not. It's going to be uncomfortable, but the discomfort that the league is going to feel isn't as bad as the discomfort the league would have felt in every way if they would have let this slide as it is. I don't think they're being noble. I don't think they deserve the credit for that. And in that same way, I think that this arbiter that they pick, we're going to be watching. If Roger Goodell's like, hey, it's my brother, Steve Goodell. He's going to be the outside arbiter. He doesn't work for the NFL. Nobody's going to buy that. They're going to have to get somebody where we're all going to look at this person's credentials. We're all going to see who they are and if they have any kind of a history with the NFL and representing them and stuff like that. So I think they're going to at least ostensibly have to pick somebody that will be not totally in the bag for them.
You're not buying that?
It's a sham.
Yeah.
Let's be real. Like you got a judge who's been in the courtroom for 25 years. She took a look at both sides. She came to a conclusion, and she gave you her judgment. You said, well, that's okay. It's okay. It's not that big a deal. Let's pick somebody else. Is the Players Association going to get a chance to pick? No, it's just the guy. Trust me, he's going to be fair and equitable. That's what they're going to do. Now, here's the problem. If you look at other cases, right, Let's go look at, there's a couple other precedents that are nice little nuggets. So in the John Gruden case, John Gruden went to court and said, I under no circumstances want to go into mediation with the NFL because it is a sham. Because Roger Goodell is going to eventually be able to say whatever he wants to. Judge said, you know what? We're going to let your case go in court and you don't have to go to mediation. Flores argued the same thing. I refuse to go to mediation because of the way the mediation is set up, that Roger Goodell is ultimately going to be able to make it go away or do whatever he wants. Judge in that case said, you're right. No arbitration, continue on with the process. Two judges have looked at the arbitration process and said, well, this doesn't look above board, kind of. Yeah. And so why would I believe that all of a sudden you're going to pick a guy out of a bag that's more qualified than Sue Robinson?
Here's the only problem, guys, with this situation. The Players Association, now, maybe they'll end up going to federal court, and maybe this will be the big thing we think it might be, and I hope it does, and I hope they stick it to the NFL owners. My one concern about that is the players agreed to this system.
Yep.
We didn't, at the time, when we were worried about a lockout, we were looking at like salary cap and all these things. We weren't really looking at this. This was an afterthought for us at the time. You were not looking at every detail. I can't for the life of me understand why the players would have agreed to this. There should have, to me, they like what was the NFL? Let's say what they should do was you go to Judge Robinson. And if you want to appeal, then you appeal to another independent person selected by the commissioner and the players. And then the second appeal that's it. You get one appeal, and that's the end of it. And why the players didn't push for that little extra? What was the league going to shut down the league for that? I mean,
so this is all J.C. Treader's fault, is what you're saying.
I mean, the players
this is all Treader's fault.
The players have put themselves in this situation, and if I'm Judge Robinson, I'm ticked. That, as Jason said before, because I feel like I've been used as a pawn.
Hey, Jason, would the NBA Players Association have took that deal?
I don't know, because I wasn't I wasn't part of the negotiations. I think you have a valid point, but at the same time, the players in the NFL always cave.
They do
on issues like this. It's the weakest union, really.
Yeah.
Of all of them, of the three. I don't know anything about hockey, but of the three that we have here in town, NFL is I've said this before. I had Browns players in the locker room back when we were allowed in the locker room pre-COVID, saying there's changes coming and we're going to fight, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I'm like, okay, and then they rolled over on everything.
Yeah.
Because they always do. So, it does feel like a rigged system in a lot of ways. And I think that the NFL probably told them this is the way it's going to be. And they just said okay, like they do on so many other issues.
I think a big difference with the NBA, though, is, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, the players and not David Stern, and Adam Silver have a pretty good relationship, right? I mean, there's mutual respect there, I believe, as opposed to the NFL.
Adam has done a really nice job of forging relationships with the game's biggest stars.
Yeah.
LeBron loves him. And it doesn't mean he agrees with all of his decisions,
sure,
but he has a deep respect for him, and he can pick up the phone and get Adam on the phone anytime he wants. And it's just not him. All of the game's biggest stars, Adam's done a really nice job of having open lines of communication with them. He wants to hear from them. He values their input on things. And I think probably of all the three, the commissioner, Adam has handled, of all the commissioners in the major sports, Adam has handled those relationships with the players the best of all of them. Baseball hates Rob Manfred. The NFL hates Roger Goodell. But the NBA players really do respect and like Adam Silver.
I'll tell you what, Boo. He said something, Jason said something that I completely, wholeheartedly agree with. And you said, too, hey, you signed it, right? Yeah. Anybody tell you not to sign that? Come on now. Like, that's part of negotiation. And one of the things I always talk about people is you don't get what you deserve. You get what you can negotiate. And you should have known, given the history of what this league has been doing, why would you sign up for that?
It's amazing.
Now, I will say this, too, though, and it is where I was getting at. The problem is the Players Association has some cracks. They don't have all the leverage. They have some areas they can pry in. But I don't think, to Jason's point, I don't think they got the heart. we talking about it with Democrats all the time. They don't fight the same way Republicans do traditionally. They go in and they get what they need to get done. Other leagues, other NFL Players Association, they go to the mat. In the words of OG, I don't know if the Players Association is ready to peel back the covers and really go and say, no, we're going to take this drag out. I don't think they haven't shown it yet. I haven't seen in the history of it.
I think the reason they made this deal, though, was the NFL, like you said, they dominate their players for the most part more than any other union in league's union. But I think that the union said, at least this is a layer of protection that we didn't have before. It used to just be whatever Roger said, then that's what it ended up being. Yeah. They said, we'd rather have a half loaf rather than none. And they said, well, at least we'll take this arbiter. It'll be more public. It'll be an independent person. Hopefully it won't come to that next level. But even if it does, there will be more attention paid to this. And they are getting more attention paid to it than they would have otherwise if it just would have been like it used to be with the NFL just saying, well, here's what we decided, so take us to federal court.
And the NFL would do it without, there was no 15-page brief as to why they would do it.
Right.
And whoever they end up getting to hear this appeal, I would imagine there's going to have to be something written there. It can't just be like old school NFL. Well, now it's 10 games or 12 or whatever. Now maybe it will be. I know you look scared. You might be right. Like they just might do whatever they want. But
they gave her this job, though, and they did what they did was they limited her greatly in her ability to actually follow through on what she found. Because again, she came out and said everything the NFL accused him of, in my opinion, from what I've seen, he is guilty of.
Right.
But based on the parameters that they have given me, that I'm allowed to sentence on, this is the most that I can do. Now, you guys can take it from here and do what you want, but this is how I'm limited. Your system is jacked up.
Yes.
You guys were terrible at making this system, but this guy also did some creepy stuff that I find incredibly creepy based on my the 4 people that I've talked to and everything that I've seen. I think they've made their argument. But this is all I can do. Ball's in your court. You guys are a disaster. Bye, I'm Sue.
Mikey Mc,
That's what
I
she
think
said,
you're
pretty
100%
much.
right.
Sue's out.
Mikey Mc. By the way, the fake Sue Robinson on Twitter. Have you guys seen this?
Yes, I have.
I just found out that I know the person who. Well, I don't know the person, but I know the person's boyfriend.
This is the weirdest name drop I've ever heard. That might have been the worst name drop.
It's terrible.
You know the boyfriend of a fake Twitter account.
I know,
holder.
boyfriend of the fake Twitter account.
Look at this, guys.
But it's very funny. Check it out. I retweeted one today that was really good by the fake Dr. Sue Robinson, or Judge Sue Robinson. Mikey McNuggets, what do you have for us?
I got a question for you that's based off an internet comment we got, so let's do a little PCC Airfoils love real quick.
Yeah.
Are you looking for a job with career advancement and great benefits? PCC Airfoils is a leading manufacturer in Northeast Ohio. All locations of PCC Airfoils in Eastlake, Mentor, Wickliffe, and Minerva are hiring for all positions at $18 and up, plus full benefit packages, paid time off, and a signing bonus. Apply online at precast.com/careers to learn more. Mary Kay should be hopping on with us in a sec.
PCC, PCC. No,
Yeah, that was fun, though.
I didn't feel that.
Just didn't have anywhere to go.
I forgot. I had a particular song in my head, like a classical music song, and just as I was about to start, I lost the rhythm.
And then you just remixed it.
And
That's
I just
okay.
rambled.
Well, anyway, still, great product. Great place to work.
PCC. Go ahead.
So yesterday,
Yeah.
this is what Mike Florio tweeted after he read the NFL statement. He said, pretty much in a nutshell, Watson's going to be suspended for a lot longer than 6 games. So I know we don't have any information, but what do you think is the result of this appeals process? Will Watson end up missing more than 6 games? If so, how much? How do you see this playing out?
I am going to. By the way, I've seen a few things about. Well, part of their beef is they want him out for the Texans game. Which, if that's true, that's absurd, number one. Number two, it's once again proof that they're not doing anything noble.
Nope.
It's all about PR.
Yep.
Number three, why would they have made that game earlier in the year? I'm going to remain at least somewhat optimistic. I know everybody's doom and gloom right now, and I get it. I understand the doom and gloom about him playing. I'm going to say that it ends up being 8 games, as I was saying all along. They had 2 more games, and he gets a massive fine. So not many more games, 2 more games, and a massive fine. That's what I'm going to say.
Jason?
But I'm just guessing at this point, obviously.
What do you think, Jace?
Man, I have no idea. I would say it's not looking good for the Browns at this point. I think it's probably going to be 10 to 12 games and possibly the entire season.
Jake?
I think that's very much in play. We've heard all along that that's what the NFL wanted, and they're not going to stop until they get it.
This is so there's like a two-track thing right here, right? So if Roger Goodell is ultimately changing the decision and appointing someone else, when you look at labor law, right, judges in the appellate courts are very strict about changing awards of arbitrators. Now, which arbitrator is it? Is it going to be? Is Roger Goodell the de facto arbitrator, right? Is because he stepped in and said, I'm going to appeal it? Or is Sue Robinson, is she on record as being the arbitrator? Because if you look at it, when they appeal it and the NFL Players Association goes to a judge, they're going to say, traditionally, in this country, we don't overturn arbitration decisions unless there's corruption, unless the person had gross negligence, or there was certain levels of misinformation or misdeeds, right? So with that being said, you'll see who's going to be the arbitrator. If Roger Goodell is, it'll be hard for them to overturn it because he's the end arbitrator. If they're going to say the initial arbitration was made by Sue Robinson, the Players Association has a little wiggle room to say, you're overturning that, and that you shouldn't do that by precedent.
Real quick, we're going to go to Mary Kay. But guys, how many games it's going to end up being, if you had to guess?
Man, I would say he might not get suspended this year if they get an injunction.
I think he's out for the season. I think they're going to make a point of this right now. I think it's too public, and I think that he's out for the year.
By the way, for the record, even if he's suspended for the season, I still would have made the trade. Mikey McNuggets, go ahead.
We got a guest joining us via the Gridiron Guys hotline.